Good morning, everybody. Can I please get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Thanks, Peter. Hello, nice to see you. Thanks, everybody. I hope everyone's having a really lovely start to the day. It's cold and drizzly and rainy again in Sydney, so that's a little bit disappointing after a few days of sunshine, but hopefully the sunshine and springtime is on its way very quickly. Thank you all very much for joining me here this morning. It looks like Colleen's still having some issues getting connected to audio, so hopefully she will be able to hear us shortly. Can I please get another thumbs up if you can see the pretty pink screen that is shared? Yes, fabulous. All right, technology for the win this morning. Well done, everybody, for making the time to come along and have this conversation about supercharging your productivity and getting more done in your day. I'm a big believer in the idea and the concept that time is the one thing that we can't buy more of. We can't sort of wish it into existence, and so all we can do is choose very consciously and very carefully how we choose to use the time that we do have. And so this essence of productivity is what I'm all about, with the goal of making sure that we get more of the right things done, the most important things, both in life and in business, because in my world, there's really no separation between life and business. It's all just life. It's all part of the same hours that we have in the day, and hopefully your business is a reflection of your ultimate life's purpose and the footprint that you'd like to leave on the planet. So I do know, and I'd love to shout out to the people that will be watching this on catch up, because I know there were quite a few people who registered but couldn't make the time. So hello from past me to future you, to all of those people that will be joining us on catch up later. And thank you for everybody who has joined us here live today. We will still probably get a few people drop in as we go, and I'll do my best to manage the waiting room. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Frances. It's lovely to meet you. And I am a self-professed productivity ninja who essentially spends my time helping businesses that are growing and scaling get more of the right things done faster, better, and smarter. How did I become qualified to do this? Well, I spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder in the corporate world with brands like Telstra and Canon and Medicare and Vodafone, and helping them be efficient and productive and get more done. And then I started to carve my own path as an entrepreneur about 10 years ago. During that corporate career, I became certified as a project manager and as a change manager and as a training facilitator. And at the time, those skills were really useful to my corporate ventures and the roles that I held in those corporate organizations. But then as I moved into this role as an entrepreneur and moved into the world of business, I started to realize that they were a little bit of a superhero power skill to bring into the world of running a small business. And in terms of informal qualifications, I also gained experience in leadership, in management, in delivering and designing process improvements, deploying technologies, optimizing customer experience, and with a really deep focus on creating efficiency and optimization in business. And so this perfect little blend of skills, it took me a few years actually to realize that after experiencing massive growth in business in my first few years, that I perhaps had this unique blend of capabilities and skill sets, which really centered around my ability to get stuff done and talk with other business owners and talk about their journey. And one of the things they asked me the most is like, how do you get so much done? How do you get such momentum? And so I started to catch on that perhaps this was a skill and a capability that not everybody had in their back pocket, and started to explore different ways that I might be able to bottle that magic and build a bit of a framework around it and create a repeatable and replicable framework that other people could utilize in order to get some of the momentum and the success that I'd been lucky enough to experience. And so over the past few years, I've been bottling that magic and trialing it out and working with lots of small business owners in order to help them accelerate their success on their growth journey, because ultimately we can't grow without the foundations that enable us to support that that momentum and that scale, because things get harder with scale, not easier. So that's a little bit about me. And I thought that probably the best place to kick off the session today was with a little bit of a, let's create a baseline, let's benchmark. What are we talking about when we say the word productivity? What is productivity? And so for me, my definition of productivity is about getting, firstly, the right things done, right? And focusing on the things that are the most important, getting them done at the right time, both strategically in terms of at the right point on our growth journey, and at the right time based on when we had planned for those capabilities and activities to be available, with the right resources. I'm going to talk about resources a few times today, and when I do, what I mean by resources is time, money, and people. And so having the right resources in place to get those right things done at the right time. But the real crux of this sentiment is the final part of the sentence. It's to achieve a defined vision or objective. Now, why that's so important is because we don't know what the right things are unless we know the destination, right? We can't be productive. We can't focus on the most important thing if we don't know where we're headed, what the end destination is, because it is the goal, the objective, the target, the vision, the end state that helps us define and clarify the steps we need to take on the pathway to get there and which of those steps are the most important. And so I sort of coined this concept or this term of productivity on purpose. It's not just about getting the most done or being the most efficient. It's about getting the most done and being the most efficient in alignment with the purpose, the vision, the objective, the goal, the target that we're setting, so that we're not just we're not just getting heaps of stuff done, we're getting those right things done. And so the framework that I've built is very much centered around this combination of concepts and in alignment with this as my definition of what true productivity really is. So now that we've baselined and aligned ourselves on that as a definition, let's talk a little bit about why productivity matters. What's the point? Okay, cool. So we're getting the right things done and we're getting them done at the right time and we've got the right resources and we know where we're going. Yay, but why? Why do we even care? I was doing some research recently and I found an article in Forbes magazine which highlights the 8 common reasons that small businesses fail. And they can fail at any point in their journey. There's lots of stats out there that talk about how many businesses don't make it past the 2-year mark or the 5-year mark or the 10-year mark and all these different milestones. But in reality, a business can fail at any point in their career based on lots of different influences. Look at, for example, Virgin, who went into into voluntary administration at the start of the pandemic because they didn't have the capability to survive through that journey. And so they can fail, and these failure points can occur at any point in the business journey. But the 8 most common reasons that happens is, firstly, no vision. I'm going to skip past the ones that aren't relevant to our conversation today. Number 3, no business plan. Number 5, no action. And number 8, no consistency. And the reason that this article captured my attention is that's 50% of the 8 most common reasons that small businesses fail that relate to our ability to be productive, to execute, to make sure that what we're actioning and executing is aligned with purpose and vision, right? And so what this said to me is that knowing where you're going, having a clear plan to get there, and taking consistent action towards that plan are those critical keys to both the survival and the growth of any business at any stage. And so the interesting kind of, as I reflected on this a little bit more, and my observations of small businesses, having been working with them for the last 5 or so years, is that most people have some of these things in place. They might have a very clear vision, and there might be action takers that go and tick things off the list and get things done. But perhaps where some of the gaps sit is in their ability to show up consistently, right? Or maybe they don't have a clear plan, and so while they get things done, the results that they get on the back end of that are kind of patchy and misaligned, and they don't quite get that momentum. They're always kind of chipping away, but never fully knocking down the tree, as they sort of start again every time they recommence. Or perhaps another example is having a clear business plan and taking action fairly consistently, but not necessarily having that big picture goal, that vision, that North Star understanding of where it is they're really going, that helps them unite and align around that core vision and objective, and then ultimately kind of getting things going in different directions, because nobody's kind of united around this one end state. So the buses start heading down different roads rather than all ending up at the master destination. So it's really in the combination and the collection of all of these things working in harmony that we're able to really supercharge and solidify our business's capability to take action and execute and be productive. But when we start trying to get things done, I'm sure most of you, anybody who's ever tried to deliver anything in business, regardless of the industry that you're in, the nature of your business, the size of your business, probably feels this in their soul, right? It can sometimes feel a bit like a game of whack-a-mole. Something pops its head up, and we put all of our focus on this thing, and we try to put them all back in its little cage. And then something else pops up over here, and we've got to go focus on this one, and then over here, and then over here. And so our attention is constantly being stolen and pulled into the thing that is the most important or the loudest right now, rather than us very intentionally and consciously sort of deciding what activity is truly the most important for the long-term achievement of our vision, and working on that. But these things, these moles that are popping their heads up all over the place, require our attention. It's not that we can kind of ignore them, because that is what running a business is all about. And so rather than it being a linear line from, oh, I've got this idea, let's just do the work and get it done, we find that it's often a little bit messy, and things that are even really simple and straightforward, we think, hey, we're going to launch a new product, and we're just going to write this marketing material and update our website and send an email to our customers, and that's all it's going to take. We discovered that there's every lid that we lift has with it its own complexities, and we need to then start to think about, well, what's the technology implication of that, and how are we going to account for it, and how are we going to invoice, and how are we going to make sure that we're reporting that new information differently. And so every time we try to do one simple little change, we uncover all of the mess that sits underneath the surface, and need to kind of coordinate our way through a labyrinth of decisions and considerations in order to get to the done state for that simple thing. And so that all sort of manifests and shows up in what I hear daily are the common get stuff done challenges. Things like, we tried to implement a solution to this problem so many times, but it just doesn't stick, and so I've given up. I'm just going to stay with how things are, because no matter how many times I've tried to solve this problem, I just can't get it nailed. There's just so much on the list, right? When I look at my list of things that need to get done, there's 700 things. There's no possible way that I could get through them all, and so I just don't know where to start, and it sits in the too hard basket. We're really, really good at starting stuff, but then something urgent always comes up and we lose momentum and never manage to find our way through to the end of the implementation, is another key one that I hear. I got heaps of ideas, but no time. I hear that daily. I just don't have time. I've got all of these things I want to do, but no time to actually get them done. I keep getting pulled back into the day-to-day. So I work really, really hard on focusing on making things happen, but I keep getting dragged back into this day-to-day of the business, and I never manage to sort of maintain my focus in that more strategic space. And then the team-focused one. I keep trying to make these changes happen. I've got these great ideas and I get momentum and I start the ball rolling, but it really only ever seems to work properly if I'm the one doing the work, right? I can't seem to be able to delegate and scale and systemize this process of making really good, important things happen in my business. So hopefully some of those challenges resonate with you, and that's why you're joining me here today. And you may even have a couple of extra ones to add to the list. But this is kind of the outcome of that messiness, right? That messy spiraling mush of reality that comes to play whenever we try to make real progress in our business. But there's a solution, and that's what we are here to talk about. So let's dive into what I call the GSD framework, which is the get stuff done in the politically correct version framework. And it is really simple, right? The path from an idea to execution isn't always smooth, but the framework that we use in order to create as much smoothness as possible, right? Please don't mistake me. Utilizing this framework doesn't mean we all of a sudden go, create that straight line. There's still going to be bumps and hurdles and messy things along the way. It's just that we insulate ourselves from the impact of those things by utilizing a framework through which to logically organize and structure and pull apart the things that we're trying to get done, so that we can more consistently show up and take action towards a very clear vision and start getting that real momentum. And so 4 simple steps that we're going to walk through together today, starting with identify, right? The very first step of getting stuff done is identifying what it is that needs to be done, and doing this kind of holistically, because if you're anything like me and subject to a little bit of shiny object syndrome, we see some cool new technology advertised on Facebook and we lose 4 hours going down the rabbit hole of, I wonder how I could use that. Oh, there's this new thing where we can SMS customers and take payments, and maybe we could use that. And so identifying is about kind of rolling up all of those ideas and catching them somewhere without getting lost down the rabbit hole of trying to implement and adopt everything without fully thinking it through, right? It's about taking that thing, going, that's really cool, let me put that in a holding pen, and when the time is right for us to decide what needs doing, then we will consider all of the different ideas, all of the different need to do's, all of the different priorities, and make some very good decisions off the back of that information. So step 1 is just kind of identify all of those things, and we'll dive into that in a little bit more detail in a second. And step 2 is prioritize, because there has to be a most important thing. If we try to do everything all at once, we'll never get everything done, and we'll probably never get anything done because our focus will be too split across too many things. And so we need to go through a process of prioritization to make sure that we're really honing our focus on the things that are the most important. Then we go into pulling together a plan, and that's simply a process of breaking down the big thing that needs doing into its smaller things, or mapping out for those routine day-to-day business as usual type activities, mapping out who's going to do it when, just building a plan around it so that it's clear and it's consistent and everybody's on that same page. And then finally, we do the do, right? We execute, we follow the step-by-step plan, and we watch the magic happen and the thing come to life. So let's have a little bit of a look into each of those steps in some more detail. I'll give you some of the tools and tips and ideas and different success strategies that I use to break down this framework on a daily basis for my clients, large and small. So starting with identify. The core essence of identifying all of the things that need doing is that you can't be productive if you don't know where you're going. And so catching and collecting all of the ideas, all of the steps of a process, all of the things that need to be achieved in order to reach your ultimate North Star goal destination is about, pulling all of this together into a centralized place. And so as we move through these 4 steps, I'm going to kind of bring 2 lenses to the conversation, because there's 2 types of things that we need to do in our worlds, right? First, we need to manage the day-to-day. There's invoicing to be done, there's marketing to be created, there's team members to support, there's customers to support and deliver products for. So there's all of these kind of business as usual standard day-to-day things that need to occur. And then on the other hand, there's the strategic stuff, the stuff we want to do to improve our business, the technology that we want to implement, the new products that we want to launch, the new customer group that we want to create a product for, the team member we want to hire, right? There's the non-business as usual things, which are more about establishing and strengthening and systemizing and growing our business. And so this framework is applicable in both of those scenarios, right? We can use it to manage the minutiae of our day-to-day task list, and we can use it to manage the growth and optimization and improvement of our business on a big long-term picture. So identify. Whether your focus is improving the day-to-day or doing the big picture stuff, the core here is about clarity. The word of the day in the identify sort of step is about creating clarity. And probably further to that, it's about centralizing that clarity. So we have one core master place where everything that needs doing is captured. And so if you don't currently have, here's the 6 steps that we need to go through in order to onboard a new customer, or here's the 5-step process that we follow when we complete an invoice. If you don't already have that stuff kind of mapped out into some kind of a checklist, then the best approach is to spend some time doing that. Brainstorm it by yourself, have a post-it party, one of my favorite things to do in the world. Get out the post-it notes and track everything and write it all down and make sure you've got a really clear picture. Collaborate with your team, because they probably see things and know things and understand things that you don't necessarily have full visibility of, or have different perspectives on what needs to be completed. But ultimately, the goal of whichever activity you choose is about pulling together a list of everything that needs doing, and then capturing these ideas into an easy to reference, easy to manage list. So I'd probably look to bundle together things that are aligned. And so, for example, here's all of our marketing tasks that need to happen on a monthly basis, all captured in one primary list. And then perhaps here's our strategy or operations plan for the year. Here's all of the big ticket items that we want to do. And then maybe here's our parking lot. Here's our stuff of ideas, those random technology rabbit holes, the shiny things, the 3 a.m. wake up in the middle of the night, go, oh, why don't I launch this whole new thing, right? A place to capture all of those things. So it doesn't all need to go in one master list that then becomes overwhelming, but it should all be in one place, but segmented into these little bundled, I call them buckets or groupings, where you sort of put like with like, so that you've got easily referenceable and manageable and maintainable lists that are stored somewhere electronically, so that when you wake up at 3 a.m, you can just pull out your phone and go to that list and go, I've just had a great idea. Let's start, this whole new business venture. Let's go do this whole extra thing. And you can brain dump all of your idea, know that it's captured and it's not going to be forgotten, but not get lost down the rabbit hole of trying to fully flesh out everything that you need to know about that item in that moment. So with that as kind of the essence of the identify step, right? It really is kind of the easiest one, because the creation of ideas for entrepreneurs is probably the simplest part of the process, right? We're really good at coming up with all of the ideas. And what this is about is how we take that idea and actually make it come to life. So we won't spend too much time on identifying, but a couple of pro tips to help you get momentum in that identify stages, right? So firstly, organize them effectively. There's no one right way to organize them. The little screenshot example that I've included is grouped into, well, these are all my sales projects and improvements that I want to do, and here's all my marketing ones. You might also do them based on team. If you've got a large team, maybe you've got your customer and client delivery team, and you've got your marketing team, and you've got your sales team, right? Maybe it's kind of split based on team. Maybe it's split based on revenue generation versus non-revenue generating. Maybe there's 700 possible ways of organizing or collecting or grouping your tasks. It just needs to make sense to you. The other pro tip around this is, when you're capturing things, it's really important to clearly define them such that they have a start and a stop, right? So as an example, if we were just to create a strategic project priority to say, we need to improve our marketing, that's not a good reflection of the task that needs to happen, because it's not specific enough, right? It's not clear, it's not defined. How do I know when I have improved marketing? Where's my defined boundaries, the fence that surrounds that item? Whereas if develop a marketing strategy might be a better articulation, because I know once I have a marketing strategy that is documented, that I have completed that task. One of the things that I do quite a lot is, whenever I add an item to a list, I do give it a bit of a blurb, a bit of a summary. And so develop a marketing strategy, as an example, I might say, well, firstly, what problem am I solving, or what opportunity am I realizing? And so for develop a marketing strategy, I might say, we currently have some great marketing material and we've got a really good rhythm and routine around it, but we're not getting the traction on this particular customer segment. And so I really want to build a marketing strategy to address that, right? What is our ultimate objective? And getting specific here, our ultimate objective for building this marketing strategy is to double the amount of impact our marketing is having in terms of audience engagement and lead generation. What specifically is involved in the completion of the item, right? So the next bit might be, okay, so to do this activity, the first thing that we're going to do is do a health check on our current marketing. We're going to dive into what's working and what's not. We're then going to start to, in terms of strategy, we're going to break the strategy down into the different types of marketing that we currently do or could do. And we're going to set some targets and write out a document that defines our targets and our initiatives and our campaigns that we're going to use in order to achieve the ultimate objective that we spoke about previously. And then the fourth item of consideration there is what impacts or considerations will we need to factor in when completing that task. And so we do need to think about making sure that we don't cannibalize our existing customer segment while we start to work on this other customer segment. We need to make sure that we don't rob Peter to pay Paul and end up negatively impacting our overall in the process. So we do need to sort of factor those things in while we build this plan. And so to sort of recap those 4 questions that we ask in summary, what problem are we solving or opportunity are we realizing? What's the ultimate objective of this particular task? What specifically is involved? What's the scope? What are the dot points of the things we will actually do? And what impacts downstream or other considerations do we need to factor in when we're completing this task? And if we can answer those 4 questions against each of the items, then we'll find that when we look to revisit that, perhaps 3 months down the track, because maybe it's not the first thing we're going to work on, once we revisit it, we're really clear on our original thinking, what was intended, and we can then sort of pick that ball up and run with it without looking at a list and going, what did I mean by that again? Implement sales automation activities. What was I planning on automating? I don't remember. And so any further context in terms of links or rationale is really useful. But where you can, giving it that extra context can be really helpful in the identification stage to help you downstream. That example obviously focused very strongly on an improvement project and something a bit more strategic. If we pan that back and look just at like a day-to-day action or activity, it's also a super useful strategy to capture those 4 key items, perhaps at a slightly less detailed level for each of your day-to-day tasks as you're sort of identifying and adding flesh on the bones for them. Especially if you have more junior or new team members, it can help as part of their training and to give them context as to the why and the ultimate objective of the day-to-day tasks that they're completing. So that's step number 1, identify. Let's have a look now at step 2, which is prioritize. And the headline essence here is that if everything is a priority, then nothing is. And I know that pretty much everybody I speak to, when they're looking at the big list of 700 things that they want to get completed in the next year, I know that we look at that list and we go, everything is important and everything is urgent and everything is a top priority. But the sad fact is we humans are really only capable of fully focusing on one thing at a time, right? And we have limited resources. In a large corporate organization, very commonly there's 10 or 12 big transformation projects going on at once. But in the small business world, we do have limited resources, right? We don't have a genie giving us a never-ending bucket of time, money, and people. And so we need to utilize those resources as effectively and efficiently as possible to make sure that we maintain that focus in order to achieve the ultimate outcome of getting our priorities done. So I'll share with you in a second my prioritization matrix and how I go about choosing where I'm going to focus my resources. But there may be specific criteria that, because of the nature of your business or the nature of your team, you want to utilize or replace in this matrix. So make it work for you. But the ultimate objective here is to use a consistent method of prioritization that is not just gut feel or what's most shiny or what's most exciting on any given day, and use that consistent method to select and decide what the one thing you're going to work on at a time is, and then fully focus your energy and efforts on that one thing. And so the prioritization matrix I use is this. We have two axes or two dimensions that we look through. The first is impact. Now, everything that I do in business is about impact. What impact am I having to my team, to my customers, to my quality of life, to my family, to the people around me, to the world at large? What's the impact that I'm having with the work that I do? And so as you're looking at all of the items that you've just put into your identified list, where do they sit on the impact scale? Are they high impact, medium impact, low impact, or somewhere in between? The second scale is the effort scale. How much effort will this take? How many of my resources, would be another way to ask this question. How many of my resources will this take in order to achieve? And so is it something that's fairly quick and simple to deliver, and so it's low effort, or is it something that might take hours, days, weeks, months, a significant amount of money, a significant amount of people's time in order to achieve, or a significant amount of complexity? And so once you plot all of those items in your identify list on this matrix, it'll sit in one of four categories: either quick wins, worthy pursuits, easy efficiencies, or time wasters. And you can guess what we're going to do with the time wasters. But before we get there, mission critical, you'll notice there's this pink box in the middle that is our mission critical stuff. There's certain things that as being in business that we absolutely must do. And if we don't do them, then the house falls down, right? So for example, if our website gets hacked, we're not going to take the time to plot fixing the website on our prioritization matrix. We're simply going to get it done, especially if we're an e-commerce business that relies on our website as a vehicle for us getting what we do done. And so the things that fall into the mission critical box come first. And that is what we focus all of our energy and attention on until those things are done. Once we've cleared the mission critical from the landscape, then we can start to work on the fun, sexy improvement initiatives that fall into this framework. And so where we've got something that's going to deliver a high impact but take us low effort, then that's a quick win. And so generally speaking, not always, we would start with some of that, because momentum is good. Momentum fosters momentum, right? Once you get the ball rolling, it rolls much more effortlessly. And so creating momentum is much easier when we start with some quick wins. It doesn't take quite as much effort to make sure that we achieve the finish line, and are usually a little bit faster to find our way through to the impact. Then we look at our worthy pursuits. And our worthy pursuits are the bigger ticket, right? We're going to need to invest a bit of time and a bit of money and a bit of hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears in making this thing come to life. But it's absolutely worth it, because I know that it's going to have a big impact. And so we're going to make the decision to prioritize and focus on those things. Only after you have cleared all of your quick wins and all of your worthy pursuits should you consider anything that sits below the line, purely because it's not going to have the impact that the others are. And so if we're prioritizing those things, then where it's kind of like empty calories, right? It's just not giving us the real benefit that we could be seeing in our business. But sometimes a little collection of easy efficiencies is a useful pathway to follow. And so we might bundle a few of these things together in order to start getting them done. when it comes to time wasters, anything that is high effort and low impact, if it doesn't fall into the mission critical box, then those are the things that, no matter how great the idea might feel, should go directly into the bin. So this is the prioritization matrix I use. As I mentioned, there might be other axes that you want to plot for your business based on the nature if this impact effort scale isn't the thing that resonates for you, and that's completely fine. But the point is to go through an objective process of choosing 2 dimensions to assess each of your ideas against, decide where they sit in these 4 boxes, and then make decisions around prioritization with full understanding of where each of these items sits, whether they're above the line or below the line. Now, you might find when you get that piece of work done that there are multiple things above the line, as you might have a few quick wins and a few worthy pursuits. You then need to go through a process of prioritization against those key items, right? You might not be able to get all of your quick wins done or all of your worthy pursuits while still maintaining this idea of focusing on one thing at a time. And so there's a few, pro tip pathways that you might use in order to do that next tier of prioritization. So let's say we've got 6 things in the quick wins bucket. Which of those are we going to focus on this month? And some of the filters that you might look at those things through are, firstly, which requires the fewest resources to achieve, being time, money, and people. Which of these is the quickest of the quick wins, if you like? Which will generate the most revenue or save the most money by doing? Which will make my team the happiest or their life the most simple or easy? What will give me visibility to something that I can't currently see and thus make me more effective as a business owner? Which will support the success of the other initiatives. Sometimes we might find that within the 6 things that sit in that quick wins bucket, we might find that there's one that is what I call the domino. And that's the thing that is the most impactful, the thing that if I do this one thing, then the other 5 things are going to be easier, more effective, more successful, in which case that's probably the thing to choose. So, again, there might be other filters that are relevant for you in your business that are worth looking at these things through. But we then go through that secondary prioritization process of figuring out what's the one thing, the core thing that I'm then going to focus on delivering in my business. So we've gone through that prioritization stage. Let's move in to phase 3, which is planning, my favorite thing in the whole wide world, except for maybe post-it parties. Plans are nothing, but planning is everything. And so this is a bit of a revolutionary concept to think about. The point of putting a plan together isn't the outcome of having a plan. It's what you learn and understand and connect with and create through the process of doing the planning. That's where the conversation happens. That's where you follow an idea all the way down the daisy chain path and go, oh, hang on a second, I haven't thought about this, which is a critical, make or break moment in the implementation of this idea. That when it was just an idea and when it was just in this kind of initial high level phase, you maybe didn't think about this one critical linchpin that could make everything come unstuck. And so the process of planning is kind of like educating yourself to a point that you're actually ready to implement. And it has a nice byproduct of having a bit of a plan, a bit of an intention that you can then communicate to your team, to your customers, to whoever your impacted people are, so that you can then look to bring that idea into the world. And again, through these 2 different dimensions of our day-to-day and our bigger picture strategic projects. Within the day-to-day, you might look to build a plan that is a dynamic task list that just simply details what needs doing, when it needs doing, who's going to do it, what tools and resources and information they need in order to achieve it, and what's the trigger, how will they be notified, or how will they know that the task is ready to be completed, and perhaps some instructions that say, if things go sideways, if things go off course, if that information is not available, if there's an error, if this person's not in, right, what are the contingency plans of what to do, when to escalate, when to ask for help. And so the plan for our day-to-day is simply that. It's basically an evergreen task list that we can work through as we move through the things that need doing in our business. If you're working with a strategic project, this whole idea of let's build a marketing strategy or let's deploy this technology, then it's a little bit more of an in-depth process where we map out each individual step on the pathway to achieving that ultimate activity or task or project. And so the things we need to think about there are, what order do I need to complete these things in, right? Is there something that has to happen first? Are there dependencies where I can't do B until A is completed? How long am I expecting each of these things to take? How much time should I be allocating from my resources? How much money should I be allocating from my resources? What tools or technology am I going to need in place? And when do I need to start thinking about that in order to be ready to commence this activity? And ultimately, who should own each of the components, and who should be a support resource as we move through each of those stages? And so as we compile this plan, it can look, I've prepared two examples. One's the roadmap, the bigger picture projects, where we kind of say, well, we have an activity here, which is deploy customer surveys. And within that, these are the, let's call it 10 things that need to happen as I move through this. I need to know what questions I'm asking, what's going to trigger the sending of a survey. I need to define who's going to receive them. I need to think about what I'm going to do in response when somebody does actually answer the survey. What am I going to do with that? Then I need to build the surveys and set up any automated workflows so that I'm not manually doing everything. I need to do some testing to make sure that they don't go out. You know, one customer doesn't get a survey 16 times in a day. I need to communicate with the team and make sure that they're on board and understand what's going to happen. Then I need to press the go button and make it all live, monitor, make sure that nothing goes awry, and then eventually close that project off and celebrate. And so you'll notice in the graphic, there's a few lines that connect different things, because, for example, I can't start building the surveys until I've defined the survey questions and the triggers. There's probably something I didn't think about when I pulled this example together, which is decide what technology I'm going to use to send my surveys. And so that needs to be factored in as well. In addition to what we see here, there's then another view which would contain the who. We've obviously got the dates mapped out in this view on the left-hand side as well. What's missing in here is the who's going to do each of these activities, which is visible in a different screen. So that's the left-hand side if we're dealing with a bigger picture project. But as an example, on the right-hand side, this is kind of our business as usual plan. This is our day-to-day. Here's everything that needs to get done every day, week, month, and quarter in my business. Who's going to do it? Across to the side are sort of dates where things get ticked off, but these are evergreen tasks. And so when I tick off social media and engagement tasks each day, it regenerates for the next day. And so I don't ever need to think about what needs to be done this week. Have I completed that or not? Has my team completed the things that they're supposed to complete? I have a plan, a success plan that governs all of the work that needs doing in the operations part of my business. And then I have another one of these for marketing, and I have another one of these for my own personal success plan. And this then becomes the plan through which we run our business on a day-to-day basis. So some examples of plans coming to life, but I suppose to close out this segment of our conversation and of the 4-step approach, the real essence here is the value that comes from thinking about and pulling the plan together and asking the questions, how am I going to successfully move through this? Because as I put on the right-hand side there, weekly dashboard report together and answer some of those questions of how am I going to know when this needs to be done and where am I going to get the information from, that's where you start getting real richness in making some fundamental decisions that help you be, or help that task be less dependent on you so that somebody else can do it. So you'll notice that weekly dashboard report doesn't have my name and face next to it because I don't touch it. I receive that report now because I put the thought and the planning into here's how this activity is going to be done every week. And here's how I'm going to remove myself from the process by being very clear and defined in where the information is coming from, how it's going to get into the report and what needs to happen with the report once it's completed. So the process of unpacking the box is actually the real richness in this step. Let's move into execution. So when it comes to execution, getting it done, this is the real point, right? All of the planning and all of the identifying and all of the prioritizing all leads to the crescendo moment of getting it done. And the thing to remember here is that it's better to have an imperfect plan that's executed well than it is to have a perfect plan that's executed poorly. Because at the end of the day, you can have the most beautiful plan, but if we don't have execution, then we don't have the outcome, and it's all still just an idea. And so one of the places people get stuck in moving from planning to execution or idea to execution is feeling like it's not ready yet, feeling like I don't have all of the information. And so this is your big flashing banner that says, just start, just get the ball rolling, make it happen. You'll learn along the way. You'll skin your knee, you'll make a couple of mistakes, you'll have to backtrack and take a different road. All of that is really, really normal. But the rubber doesn't meet the road until the execution happens. And so get as close as possible in your planning and then start to get the action taking underway. So when we come to moving into this execution phase, we've just been through planning. We deeply and viscerally understand each step that needs to occur through this process of bringing this thing to life, whether it's a daily task or a 3-month project. And since we know what needs to be done, who it needs to be done by when, how long we are approximately estimating that it's going to take, we can proactively carve out time in order to bring it to life, right? And so probably the #1 pro tip in this execution phase is don't just wait until the week and go, oh, where am I going to fit in time to do this project this week? It's about proactively carving that space out and fiercely protecting it with your life, because that's the most important priority that you have objectively assessed out of all of the things you could be doing. This is the #1. And so if we fiercely protect the time that we proactively carve out to work on those things, then we'll start to really see that momentum and that consistency. And as we learned earlier, consistent action are 2 of the key elements that create success in business. So that can look like multiple things, right? It doesn't have to be well, if we look back at this picture, it doesn't have to be on Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'm going to define the survey questions. And then on Thursday at 11 a.m. I'm going to define the survey triggers. We don't have to get super granular. We just have to have a bit of a look at how long it's going to take us and how much time we've got objectively to work through the implementation of this activity, and then proactively carve out the time to do that. So it might simply be you've got 3 hours a week that you block out to work on whatever your highest priority project is. And that could be 1 hour across 3 days of the week. And that is your non-negotiable, do not interrupt me. I'm working on bringing my dreams to life time. So it doesn't have to be super specific. I've gotten to the point where in my calendar, everything is mapped out very specifically. I know exactly what I'm working on at every 5 minutes of the day. But it doesn't have to be when you get started. You can simply create a framework that says, here's my doing stuff time, and I'm going to protect it with my life. Then we can plan in our other day-to-day work and priorities around it. And importantly, we need to measure how we're tracking against these things. So it's one thing to have this list and have the things that we're ticking off every day. But if we never look at it and it just sits there and goes into red and overdue forever, then it's not a particularly effective tool. So on a weekly basis or a daily basis, checking in and making sure that we're measuring, are we successfully implementing the plan, is important. Likewise with a bigger project. If we planned in the week of the 10th to the 16th of January to be defining our survey questions, then in the week of the 17th to the 23rd of January, we should be checking in and going, hey, did we achieve what we planned to last week? Because if we didn't, then we need to perhaps play a little game of Tetris and carve out some time for that later. And so making sure that we are consistently revisiting the plan and realigning and measuring our success against what we had mapped out for ourselves is another critical step in this execution process. Things will always happen to derail the plan. No plan will ever go to plan. Hand on heart, promise you that. Just like a holiday that you've planned where everything was going to work exactly perfectly and the car was going to be here to pick you up from there to take you to here, but then the car was half an hour late, which means you missed that bus, which means, right, the life is chaos, not perfectly orchestrated symphony. So things won't go to plan, and that's okay. The point is to have the ability and the metrics in place that help us go back and revisit and replan when we need to. Have enough flexibility in the time that we've set aside to not feel like we've failed if we don't manage to get the survey questions done this week, because we realized that before we could do the survey questions, we had to decide what technology to use, and we didn't effectively map that out when we built the plan in the first place. Well, then, cool. At least we have taken the time that we planned to move towards the ultimate objective and didn't let it derail us, right? And so having enough flexibility, always planning more time than you think something is going to take. I guarantee if you think it's going to take you an hour, it will probably take you 3, because you'll open up that lid and you'll realize all of the questions and unanswered decisions that need to be made in order to move you and progress you towards that end state. And then spread the load where possible. If all we do is carve out that 3 hours a week and we put it on a Monday morning, we're going to have this 3-hour power time, then something goes awry on a Monday, we have a sick child, or the internet's broken, then we end up in a position where we've got a single point of failure. So if we've got the ability to spread the load, so when we're executing, if today doesn't work out, then there's always a plan B and a plan C, then that's a really super helpful strategy as well. So one of my, and I can see Olivia's smiling face looking at me now, and I know she uses this quite a lot. one of my my real pro tips around getting momentum with the execution side of the process is utilizing the hour of power. And so the hour of power is, it doesn't have to be 1 hour, it can be 1 hour a day, it can be 3 hours, it can be an entire day a week, whatever time you can carve out to make this most successful. But the hour of power is about having sacred time in your diary that is non-interruptible, non-movable. This is your real focus and flow time. And so in utilizing that hour of power, there's a couple of key tips that I'd like to share with you around making that time really useful and purposeful. Firstly, be prepared. We don't want to sit down for our hour of power and go, right, we're going to be working on our survey questions. Now, what tools do I need to work on my survey questions? Well, I better open a Word document, and maybe I should do some Google searches on what good survey questions to ask are. And I better log into the survey platform that I've chosen to go and see what they've got available, right? We should be starting our hour of power with all of the tools that we need open and ready to go, so we're hitting the ground running. We should also have any of the fuel that we need, right? We should always start, if you're gonna, our brain loves to be distracted. And so if we sit down and we're like, right, I'm gonna do the most important stuff and this is awesome and amazing, oh, I'm a bit thirsty, maybe I should go get some water. Oh, I'm a little bit hungry too, right? Get into it. I'm a little bit hungry. Maybe I should go and get a snack. My desk is like all of the things that I might need available at any given moment to maintain my flow within arm's reach. And so finding a way to prevent the distractions by creating an environment where you have the fuel that you need and you're not allowing your brain to get out of flow by interrupting you with silly things like, you know, I want a snack or some water, is a really important thing to do during that hour of power. Silence is important, and silence can mean different things to different people. For me, it's about like a focus space, and I always have music in my ears when I'm in my hour of power time, because it blocks out any of the external noise that might be happening around me. For you, it might be white noise. For you, it might be actual silence. But the point is turning off distractions. Most phones and computers have a do not disturb mode, where Slack stops pinging and emails don't fly in and your phone doesn't ring and messages don't ping. And there are, like, most people have 5 or 6 different messenger apps now, right? You can receive an SMS and a Facebook message and an Instagram message and a Slack message, and all of these things steal our flow. So turn off all of those distractions, even if only for that 1 hour of power that you've set yourself up for, in order to make sure that you don't get dragged out of the flow state. And then structure. Outline a structure of what you want to achieve in your flow time before you start it. Because, you know, as we talked about before, shiny thing syndrome, we can all too easily get started working on something and then find something else and end up spending our flow time and that really valuable energy getting lost down a rabbit hole. And so if we have 3 dot points where we say, in this hour of power, these are the 3 things that I want to achieve in this time, and we can fully focus on just those things, then we can put anything else that happens to distract us into a bucket of, we're going to look at that later, and stay on task. So that is our 4 steps GSD, or Get Stuff Done framework. There's a couple of other success tools that I want to talk to you about to really leverage the power of this framework. And the first of those is how to maintain team success, because we need our dream team to come along for the ride with us in order to truly achieve all of these outcomes. And whether that dream team for you is 1 VA that supports you part-time, or you've got 10 people that operate different divisions and departments of your business, whoever or however that team looks for you, It's really important that they come along for the journey. Otherwise, even the best laid plans, even the best success plan, or the best planned project will ultimately fail. And so a couple of, I suppose, strategies or pro tips that you can think about as you start to enter the ideation and prioritization parts of this framework are how to enhance the chances of team success. Firstly, engage them in the identification and prioritization phases. They have a different perspective on your business. They may not understand the holistic end-to-end as much as you do, but get them involved, ask them the questions. They might have great ideas that they haven't spoken up about, and they might have a really unique perspective that you wouldn't have considered on your own. Then involve them in the implementation. Once we get to execute stage, they should have ownership of some things. Firstly, because your time is the most valuable resource you have, and so it shouldn't all be spent on the doing the do. And secondly, because the more they implement, the more they will own and adopt and carry that flame forward. Ask and listen to their input throughout the process. Often we ask, but we don't truly listen because we're so focused and we're so on track on what it is we're trying to bring to life that we don't really listen and hear the feedback and the input, because it risks that we might need to, reverse and take a different road. But those pieces of feedback, those little signposts that say wrong way, go back, are critical to do as you're moving through implementation instead of when you get to the end, because ultimately it's far less costly and disruptive to recalibrate early in the process rather than when you've already reached your destination. Communicate about 10 times more than you think you should. You wake up in the morning thinking about your business. You go to sleep at night thinking about your business. You cook dinner thinking about your business. You drive thinking about your business. You understand it to a degree that nobody else can or will. And so over communicating is absolutely critical in making sure that everybody is on the same page and that you're taking everybody along for the journey with you, that they understand what's the vision, what's the destination, what's the goal, where are we headed, and that they understand the pathway that we're taking each day to get there and what their priorities should be. So over communicate, even if there's only one thing you do to enhance the success of your initiatives and your day-to-day activities in bringing your team along for the ride. If there was one thing to choose, it's over communicate. Measure compliance and adherence to the new process. If you're making a change, don't just make the change and expect that everybody is on board. Change is hard. Humans like habit and routine. And so changing the way that we do things requires repetition, it requires support, it requires accountability, and it requires, some soft, gentle nudges and sometimes some large, hard shoves along the way. So measure compliance and adherence to new processes and to using technology and manage on it. Don't just kind of like ask nicely and then get dejected if people don't start following the new plan. We really need to herd the team into following things the new way. And so a carrot and a stick kind of approach that we can use to further support that is incentivize and reward and recognize based on the positive behaviors. If we're starting to see people adopt the new idea, the new framework, the new technology, the new process, or do a really good job at following the plan, well, let them know that, right? Shout their praises and give them lots of love and attention for it, because it will positively reinforce the good behaviors. The other thing we can and should do, especially if it is a technology or a process change, is turn off access to the old way of doing things, if at all possible. And so If yesterday I used to input something into a spreadsheet and tomorrow I need to input it into a database, well, delete the spreadsheet, hide it, protect it with a password, move it somewhere where I can't fall into the habit of doing things the way that I've always done them, as a way of giving me a trigger and a reminder to continue to follow the correct new pathway. All of this, I suppose, as an essence to say that change for humans will always be challenging, but if we can really take that extra time to engage our team and bring them along that journey with us, then we will 10x our success of having those changes adopted. And one thing I'll add before we move on from this team success component is that the same applies for your customers. If you've got really engaged customers, instead of people that sort of buy things once and may or may not repeat buy, if you're in a relationship-based industry where you do have that sort of two-way communication with your customers, consider the impact to them and how they're going to need to change and adapt in order to utilize the things that you're putting in place, and apply some of these lessons to them as well, because customers probably like change even less than our team do, because they're not fully immersed in our ecosystem every single day. And so certainly apply these lessons through that lens also. My final kind of success tip, if you like, in applying this framework is about technology. And the core of this is to play to your strengths. And your strengths as a business owner, as a human, are not to remember all of the things that need doing and in what order and when they're due by. It's something that we do tend to do fairly well. Some of us sort of have those little indicators where you're washing dishes and you remember that it's the day to put out the bins, for example. But when it comes to mapping out like 16 steps of a project that you're trying to deliver, or exactly what your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual rituals and tasks are, and exactly when they need to be completed and how and what tools you need, is not something our brains are wired to understand or remember. So utilize the power of technology in order to house and capture and own that information, and know a piece of paper with scribbles on it is not a piece of technology. It needs to be somewhere that is robust, that can't be lost, and that can be accessed wherever you are. So there are so many really great tools out there that can help with this, from the reminders and to-do app on your phone, or there's, Google has their own variations of those activities or those platforms, as does Microsoft if you're in one of those ecosystems. Some of my favorites, if you don't already utilize a platform, are Trello, ClickUp, Monday, or Asana. ClickUp is with the screenshots that you've seen throughout this pack, that's all been ClickUp, which is my preferred platform. But the essence here, when you are thinking about technology to govern and manage and support your personal productivity process, is around considering what you already use in your ecosystem and whether you've already got native capability that exists within that platform, so that you're not reinventing the wheel. Because ultimately, from a technology perspective, a fully connected, integrated ecosystem is the most productive, enabling tool you can have in your business. So consider what you've already got. If you don't have the functionality that you need, then consider what you can get that will integrate with what you already use, before you then, start making decisions on what technology is best for you. Now, if I was to kind of bring all of that home and give you these 5 kind of keys, these critical keys as you're moving through this process, as you're engaging your team, as you're utilizing your technology, and you're taking each step on the journey to identifying, prioritizing, planning, and executing in your business, and really leveling up your purposeful productivity. These would be my 5 keys to keep focus on. Firstly, focus, right? Focus is about focus first on what is the most important thing, and maintain that focus as you implement through those hours of powers, through making sure that you're not being distracted and pulled away into 7 other things. The second is impact. Impact is about understanding what it is we're trying to achieve, setting clear goals and targets, thinking about, when I make this change, what happens downstream to my team members, to my customers, to my data? Like what is the broader impact of the decisions that I'm making? And what does success look like? What impact am I trying to have by implementing and prioritizing this particular thing? Clarity is number 3, having crystal clarity on exactly what needs to be done, by when, and who's got ownership versus who's got responsibility, which can sometimes be 2 different things, and making sure that everybody is crystal clear on those expectations and on those guidelines is super important to making sure that we do get those right things done at the right time, in the right order, utilizing the right resources. Alignment, this is about bringing all of the people together. So making sure that we've got really clear communication with team, customers, suppliers, if you're going to have third-party suppliers involved in the execution and implementation of your plans. Making sure that those clear expectations are adequately and crystal clearly communicated, and making sure that we're measuring progress and making sure everybody knows, here's where we're going, here's where we're up to. Something that is often missed is that progress measurement, and all of those things, that alignment will increase the chances of you having a successful outcome. And then finally, accountability. So making sure that we've set targets, that we're supporting everybody in the achievement of those targets, that we're measuring progress as we go, utilizing any risk reward frameworks, and all of that being sort of utilized holistically, so that we can maintain that focus on bringing purposeful productivity into our day-to-day. So 5 key things to think about throughout all of those phases, throughout all of the activities that we're using to really supercharge our productivity. In terms of getting momentum with this framework, right, there's been a lot of information that I've just unpacked and shared with you guys. And so I wanted to share with you a vehicle through which you can get some further momentum. And that is a product that I've recently launched called a Bring It to Life Bootcamp. In essence, it's a 12-week bootcamp where we will take an idea, help you find your priority, help you plan your priority, and then provide support as you go through this process of implementing that priority into your business. We do have a special offer on at the moment that if you register before the end of this month, there is a 25% off special on that right now. In terms of the specifics and the details on that, what's kind of included at a headline level, we do a one-on-one success planning call where we identify your top priority, get really clear on what that looks like, and then build out your roadmap. We do 12 weekly small group sessions where we support you through the implementation phase of that project. And there's a lot of, they're small group sessions, so there's a lot of individual attention. It's not like you can hide away in the back. There's very one-on-one focused activities. We've been there, done that guidance and support to help eliminate the roadblocks that commonly get in the way of maintaining that momentum, right? So that we can readapt and readjust together while we move through this process and really maximize that momentum. We include personalized training and mentoring tailored specifically to your project and the progress that you're up to. So we'll do little pop-up workshops and training sessions to cover things that collectively the group that we're working with will find beneficial. So probably not too dissimilar to this, where we deep dive into a particular topic or concept that's going to help the group with their initiative implementation. And at the end of the 12 weeks, what you'll have is then a repeatable implementation framework that sort of the application, the tactical level of the concepts that I've just shared with you, that you can then take and rinse and repeat for all of your future improvement initiatives. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, then I suppose a yardstick of whether or not this is for you is, number one, you're ready to start making that real momentum in your business and really committing to the execution and action side of this framework. And you're looking for some 5-star support to help you get there. You'll obviously have, for attending this webinar, you've already received a lot of the tools and tips, and we'll share this recording and a copy of these slides with everybody that's attended and with everybody that's registered. So you can always DIY, but if you are looking for some support to get you there, then the bootcamp might be for you. My team will be popping a link in the chat shortly, which is more information on that bootcamp if it's something that you feel is something that you're interested or would like to explore. I'd like to finish. We're going to have a few minutes of Q&A. If any of you do have your questions, feel free to start banking them up now and finding that mute button to come off mute and share them with me. But the final thought I wanted to leave you with is ideas are worth nothing unless executed. And there was perhaps nobody better than, when I found this quote and I realized it was from Steve Jobs, there's perhaps nobody better to be referencing in this concept of taking big ideas and bringing them to life. He certainly led Apple through the process of doing that quite masterfully. So thank you all very much for joining me for this webinar. I really hope there's been some fabulous tips to take away with you. And I'd like to open the floor for any questions that you might have. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Francis. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much. Thanks for the webinar. My question is, I'm using at the moment ClickUp, following your advice.
Mm-hmm.
But some people, you mentioned about Trello, ClickUp. So are you saying that if we have ClickUp, we don't need to use Trello, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. They're all either or options with varying levels of functionality and capability. So Trello is kind of the kindergarten version. It really only has basic functionality, very simple to learn and use. And in cases where there's perhaps a little bit of overwhelm with technology amongst your team or yourself, then starting with something like Trello is probably really useful. But something more like ClickUp or Asana or Monday all have that advanced level of capability where you can look at your project plan via different views. You can do more around deciding where there's dependencies, more in terms of reporting and visibility, and some of the more advanced features and functionality. So yes, I would be choosing either Trello or ClickUp or Asana or Monday or any one of the other hundreds of project planning apps that are out there, and looking at that through the lens of what's best going to integrate into your process, into your team, and into your systems. Great question. Any other questions?
I may have another one if nobody is asking.
No, jump on in.
Which calendar are you using?
Cool, good question. I currently use a calendar called Fantastical, and the reason that I use that particular app is because I manage multiple calendars, both my work calendar and my personal calendar, and a couple of client calendars. And so I needed a tool that had that specific functionality. But there's, it probably, while it does what I need it to do, it's probably not my number one choice if I didn't have that specific business requirement. And that's probably the key message when it comes to any technology selection, is understanding your very particular needs and your specific use case of what you're trying to achieve with a technology, and then finding the one that best suits that. And often one of the most sort of critical needs of any of these sorts of platforms is actually about simplicity. Simplicity of use, number one, and then ability to do all of the things that I need it to do. So Fantastical is my current choice, but definitely have a think about exactly what it is you're looking for a calendar to do before making a decision on which one to choose.
Thank you, Francis.
My pleasure. All right, any other last questions before we wrap up for today? Okay, well, thank you guys once again for joining me. Thank you to those of you who will be watching that later, and do feel free to jump out to me on socials or email. And if you do have any questions, feel free to shoot them over and I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a purposefully productive day.
Thank you.